Apex Legends Season 29 is out, and I figured I'd put in my 2 cents about how I feel about everything. There's a new legend, updates to the game's core mechanics, and some needed buffs for a few characters, including, of course, my main, Vantage, which I was very excited about going into this. Glad to see she's getting the love she deserves, but we'll get there when we get there. First, let's start with the biggest selling point of the Season 29 update, the new legend, Axel. The way I see it, she's basically a cross between Octane and Horizon. The Speedster playstyle is very similar to Octane, but the niche that she fills is a lot closer to Horizon, being focused a lot more on the micro than the macro. Both ults even have something to do with enemy displacement. Personally, I believe that her tactical is the core of her kit. You can get a lot of in-the-moment mobility from the tac, especially in circumstances where your slide alone isn't enough. I think there's 2 main ways to use it. The first is to use it with your team in mind, with short distance rotates, repositioning teammates, by the way, the Nitro Gates work on down players too, rushing in with your team and stuff like that, or using it selfishly, basically using it as a bootleg Octane stim. It helps a lot for finishing off an isolated target or getting out of danger if you're low, with the main downside being the opportunity cost of not being able to let your team use it instead. Because of this, I'd personally prefer the double tac perk over the double ult perk, because it significantly decreases that opportunity cost by just letting you have 2 of them. If you save 1 gate in your pocket for when your team really needs it, you can just use the other one as selfishly as you want or need to. The slide is okay, it's nice, it's neat. It feels weird to get used to, but I don't dislike it. And it's not really as oppressive or significant as I was expecting, which is good, because I was fully expecting it to be the next Ash Dash on the initial release of her rework. It doesn't need to be all that flashy, and I feel like just the turning control alone is great. But the ult is very weird. I don't want to say it's bad just yet, but it's extremely unintuitive, and I'm pretty sure I don't even fully understand it yet. You can't just let it rip and hope it finds someone, because the chances are that it won't. If it hits a wall before it finds someone, it just kinda dies. The detection radius is hard to figure out and it feels kind of weird, and I don't like that you have minimal control over where the drone actually goes and who it actually targets. As for the knockup, it's cool, but it's difficult to follow up on. I find the knockup most useful for its stun, so you can focus on something else in the meantime, whether that's finishing off a different enemy or fleeing the scene to reset. Just a word of advice, don't use this ult indoors or in any enclosed space, like, at all. The drone's more likely to hit a wall and die, the knockup won't go as high if it goes anywhere at all, and the increased amount of cover means it'll be even more difficult to follow up. But one thing I did find the drone really useful for is as a distraction. The threat of getting knocked up and stunned is annoying enough that people will often try to either run away or target the drone itself, and that tends to be easy to follow up on. Potentially and often even easier than the drone's actual detonation. Your opponent has to choose between shooting the rapidly advancing purple blur or the rapidly advancing big-ass drone that's probably already inches away from their face. If they shoot you, they get knocked up before they do significant damage most of the time. If they shoot the drone, well, they aren't shooting you, which obviously gives you an advantage. One other thing to note is that the drone charges very fast, kind of like Maggie's ult or Mirage's ult. It's one of those ults that's highly disposable, so don't worry about wasting it. Okay, now we can get to the Vantage buffs. I don't like the canted sight. It's not a bad idea, it just feels off. The range at which you use it is closer than what you'd use the mid-range scope for, but further than what you could just hipfire for instead. Or even better, just burst them down with a shotgun or SMG, because that's guaranteed to be faster. This leaves the canted sight with this weird uncanny valley spot where the further ranges it would be useful for are outclassed by the 4x, in which the bullets are larger, but at the closer ranges it's outclassed by just using your actual gun. The thing about range in this game is that the time to kill is shorter up close, meaning you'll have the time to whip out your ult and fire a few pot shots at long range, but at close range, unless you or your opponent happen to be corner peeking and no one's bothering to push for some reason, you're just better off using your regular guns. The canted sight can be technically useful sometimes in some weird circumstances, but it feels so niche that I rarely even find myself considering using it. Also, the way you access the canted sight is weird. You hit the fire select button instead of the default optic zoom button. It's snappy, which is nice, but using a fire select key for an optic setting just feels so weird. I feel like if you just had the option to cycle between the 3 zoom settings with the same key, it'd be way better. Have it start on the canted sight or something, and then have it zoom to 2x and then 8x and then back to 2x. It's already snappy enough going from 2x to 4x that it really won't take that long, and it would feel way more natural. However, the ping buff is awesome. I treat the ult as a second tactical anyways, and thus my own mindset is on the fact that it's already pretty disposable. So just getting more chances at using it is always welcomed for me. This is an ability I don't really mind being spammable, because it already feels like it's built from the ground up to be something spammable anyways. That's why it's basically just a second tactical to begin with. No other notes, this is just a great quality of life change that makes both the passive and the ult more useful. The fall stun resistance is also nice. I feel like this should have been there from day one, and it feels way more natural, and it just lets you be so much more actionable with your jump, whether that means using it in rotations, jumping towards your team when you need to fight closer, etc. Next is the conduit buffs. I don't have much to say about this one, so I'll be brief. The implementation of split charge to the base kit is just a good change overall. The previous base tac charge was already overkill, while also being less useful because you could only apply it to one teammate at a time, meaning if both teammates were at low HP, you were just kind of screwed. Now it's at least on par with Lifeline, who could pass Doc between players to heal them both. As for the new perks, I think that the instant charge perk is objectively better. You have one perk that lets you get some guaranteed shields regardless of damage, and then you have another perk that lets you get some guaranteed shields regardless of damage, except it activates instantly. It's just better. Moving away from Legends, let's now talk about the respawn buff. I feel like it's intended to incentivize people from running supports, or I guess also Alter and Crypto, to running other Legends instead by making respawning more accessible to everyone else. Supports are still superior because of the free Mobi, but that ends up feeling less like the optimal strategy and more like a boost to what's now just a contingency plan. It's high risk, high reward, and lets your teammate get back into the fight instantly, but the only two circumstances in which this could be useful are: 1, you solo respawn while your other teammate defends against the entire enemy team, or 2, you can finish off the entire enemy team first so you can respawn your teammate safely. And neither of these strategies are foolproof. If you go for option 1, your other teammate is forced to 1v2 or god forbid 1v3 while you AFK next to your teammate for several seconds, and if you choose option 2, you still have to wipe an entire squad while down a teammate, not to mention hope there isn't a third party to prevent your respawn anyways. But it's something that can work. The option exists, which is honestly all that needs to happen. I do also like that there's a punishment for needing to respawn your teammates this way more than once, which prevents it from being spammable. As much as it's annoying to have to wait until you can do it again after your teammate dies, I totally understand making subsequent respawns harder, because it's a battle royale and lives aren't supposed to be disposable. The way it's currently implemented helps with getting people back into the fight just enough so that it feels less like a gameplay change and more of a quality of life feature to make it more engaging for everyone. The alive players get extra chances to get their teammate back, the dead players come back sooner, but everyone else doesn't have to worry about the value they get from taking out a player to begin with diminishing. It's not perfect though. I don't like that you spawn with less health, and I wouldn't even mind if you just didn't spawn with your gear either. The other respawns already give you your health, spawning next to your death box means you can just loot your own death box anyways, and even if your death box was already looted, it's because enemies are probably already crowding around the death box, and if there's already enemies crowding around the death box, you aren't respawning your teammate anyways. Even if it is flawed, I still feel like it does what it was intended to do. Whether or not that's an actual good thing remains to be seen, but I think it's good so far. Next is the in-map rotation nerfs with the removal of tridents and the removal of a lot of zip rails from Broken Moon. I'm gonna miss the tridents, I'll be honest, but I don't blame EA for removing them either. They just kinda always felt a little weird. I feel like there's a world where they could have worked, but neither implementation of tridents really felt right. They weren't really all that fast compared to some other rotation options like evac towers and skirmisher ults anyways, and they were extremely loud, massive, and impossible to miss, meaning you're guaranteed to draw attention to yourself when you use them, which evac towers also do, but again, tridents aren't as fast. That, coupled with the removal of a bunch of zip rails on Broken Moon, means that, as the devs intended, a lot of rotations will be based much more on player input and strategy. Ground rotations mean less obvious but more vulnerable targets, which generally just means that players are encouraged to be way more smart about where they go and why. The devs did specifically mention that they wanted to put more emphasis on legend abilities when considering rotates, which I think is fine. The removal of these map-based rotation options means an indirect buff to every single skirmisher in the game, as well as everyone with movement abilities, which is like everyone except the controllers except Rampart. And then there's also the abilities that, while they aren't movement-based, still absolutely help with rotation. rotations. Think distractions like mirage decoys, or line of sight blocking like Bang Smoke's or Catalyst's wall, or zoning tools like Bangalore's ult and Gibraltar's ult. Depending on the legend that you pick, most people are always going to have plenty of tools to help with the rotation anyways, and the sheer amount of zip rails and even the tridents do end up feeling redundant, and I can totally understand why they were taken out. And honestly, using abilities for rotates just feels more fun anyways. Lastly, I want to go over a few smaller miscellaneous things that didn't really fit anywhere else. First of all, the lack of Octane nerfs is unexpected. I was fully expecting Octane to just get nerfed into the ground, not only because it would make more room for Axel to shine, but also because there's precedent for it. The last time they reworked a character and gave them extra movement and dueling potential, it was Ashe, who was OP for a time, but was nerfed heavily afterwards. I'm glad they didn't go that far, but I'm still not sure why they didn't do anything. Maybe it's because they'd already nerfed him a little previously, but I'm not sure. He still feels a little oppressive. Speaking of Ashe, her dash did get buffed. Technically, kinda, sorta. The velocity boost is barely noticeable, though the dash cooldown reduction just barely is noticeable, and it technically helps, but it doesn't feel like it's enough just yet. I reduced the cooldown just slightly more and up the velocity again. Next, Altar's Void Nexus got nerfed, and it's definitely noticeable. While the teammate pull doesn't feel any different, the initial activation is way slower, and it feels like enemies can come through way faster. We'll have to wait and see if the nerf works, because it's still the Void Nexus, an ability which is inherently incredibly strong, but at the very least, I think it's a step in the right direction. Lastly, can I just take a moment to complain about how we're still getting massive server issues on season releases? Well, that doesn't bode well. And I don't know if it's just me or not, but there seems to be a pattern with Legend releases and server crashes, because the same thing happened when Sparrow came out too. This has been a constant ongoing issue, and it makes me somewhat afraid to play ranked because I don't want to get cucked by a lever penalty just because the server shits itself. I will, however, say that the server issues have reduced in the days following the launch, so there's that, I guess. And apart from those server issues, my experience with the new season was not bad. I enjoyed playing Vantage, I like the new legends, I think these are all pretty good changes. Some of them definitely still need a few tweaks, but I wouldn't say there's anything that's an outright bad change. And that includes the Candid site, which, while I don't like the way it's implemented right now, I get what they were going for and I could totally see it working if they made a few tweaks to it. I don't know how you would do that, but I want to see that working. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad the new legend isn't OP.